I really wanted to talk about helping people, because I know that when I was young, I was really, my friends were everything. My friends were everything. And so when somebody was struggling, we were all involved with that. And sometimes people would suffer, um, really difficult periods of low moods, and we would try and help, or, so I just want to say that if somebody's listening and they're like, I really want to help my friend, this would be a good one for you. So I grew up in a really big family where I was lucky people helped each other. That really was a good grounding. So I suppose that my community spirit gene was switched on from a very young age. I was always involved in community stuff, whether it was with, I grew up in a religious background, so with church, or whether that was just, somebody had a baby, so you'd go and cook food for them, or, somebody was moving house, so you'd help them. The idea of helping was in the DNA of my family upbringing. So I just want to say that's always been there. And then as I remember I was about 15, and I really, I just kind of realized one day what they did to whales, like as in the big animals. And I remember thinking, whales should not be treated badly. I had this huge empathy, and then I really felt like that something should be done about it, like that feeling of injustice and suffering shouldn't be inflicted. And I suppose that's really when I woke up to finding, whenever I saw suffering, wanting to help with that, wanting to alleviate suffering. So, fast forward 20 years later from that moment with the whales, I've landed into work that involves helping people, and helping them. I decided to focus on the good part, liberating potential, because that seemed to help people get over whatever they needed to get over. So I became an executive coach, working with leaders and helping leaders and their teams think better and feel better and do better. And, often what would happen is somebody would come and see me about that they wanted to achieve this great thing, but what would be in the way was something they were suffering about, something that they were struggling with, something they were in pain about. So my work ended up being about both, about me discovering what it is that helps and serves people when they're suffering with whatever they're suffering with. It could be some sort of anxiety, could be some sort of depression, could be some real negative thoughts about themselves that they don't know what to do about, that look really real. It could be that their life circumstances are looking like they're the cause of their suffering. These are all the things that people have. Maybe if you're a teenager, maybe you've got a friend and there's something going on at home for them, and you can see that's causing them some pain. So I say all that to say that I'm always been interested in helping alleviate suffering, but also my own. We all suffer sometimes and feel lost, and in those moments it seems like nothing makes any difference. And I know that when I witness that in another person, that can trigger something in me that makes me want to do things. Now, so I just say all of that to say really understand what it's like to see people you love suffer, whether they're young people or you're a young person and your friend. And as a parent now, seeing your own kids suffer, with something, that's like somebody taking your, ripping your heart out and squishing it up and throwing it in little pieces. So, I get it. Now, what I have to say about it is very different from what most people might have to say about it. So bear with me if it sort of feels a bit of a shock at first, right? But I do like to shock, so. So it's taken me a little while to get my head around this, or really more accurately put, to feel my way into it. But what I want to say is that when you really feel that urge to help, that feels compulsive, you want to just take a moment. You want to just take a little moment, because the first thing I want to share is that the more I want to help from a kind of, I can't be with that person suffering, if that's the driver there, the more that's actually not about helping the other person. It's about me. It's about, I can't be with that person's pain. I can't handle it. I want it to go away. I'm not okay if that person is suffering. And if you're a sensitive, empathic person, then, you know, it would be understandable that you would find somebody else's pain very, very difficult. But I tell you why that is. It's because we resonate with each other. We sense each other. We as human beings, we are all connected, right? So we are connected. Let's call it on vibration or energy level. We're connected. So when someone else's suffering is very visible to us, that we observe that, we then can often, it can resonate something. It can almost like a tuning fork wake up something in us that is a similar feeling. We observe that feeling. We feel a similar feeling. We feel despair, say, and our friend is feeling despair. We feel despair, and we don't want to feel despair. So we need to fix the feeling. It seems like we need to fix the feeling. And the quickest way to do that is to fix the person who's having the despair out there. That's how it looks. But actually, what's really going on is that, you know, we've experienced despair triggered by empathy, you could say. And if we don't understand how our own feelings work, and how feelings work for everybody, we can get, I want to say, innocently confused about the source of our own feelings and what needs to happen. And we can end up thinking we have to fix the person who seems to be suffering's feelings. So first principles are, let's understand where feelings come from and how they work. And if you've been watching other of The Secret of Everything, you'll have heard lots about this. But if this is your first one, I'm just going to explain it very quickly, because feelings really, they really look like they come from what other people do and say, or my circumstances, or my parents, or in my case, my kids. You know, it looks like what people do, or what happens in my life, whether I get that grade or into that job. Those are the things that create my experience. But the truth of the matter is, our feelings are created inside of us through this kind of this power, this neutral power, this energy. So it's like this energy comes in, we experience it as sensations in our bodies that we call feelings. We experience it as thoughts in our head, conscious and less conscious, that also create our reality and our experience. So we've got this neutral power creating our experience called thought. Everybody has it. And that's what's creating the feeling, not what is necessarily happening out there. So, you know how, like, you can all go to a movie or a dinner or a party, let's say, and some people, oh, look, I'm getting coffee and breakfast. Very good service where I am. Thank you. Ah, yum. So nothing like that first cup of morning coffee, really. So we're going to this party or this film, and we're going with the whole gang of us, and we all go there, and then we come out, and then you're like, oh, that was amazing, I love that film, that was brilliant. And then your friend says, that was the worst film I've ever seen. And you're like, have you even been to the same film? So what's happening is, right, the same circumstances are happening, but each person has their own thoughts and feelings about them. So we actually live in a world, I know this sounds crazy, but it's so obvious, and yet it's when you understand the implications, it's life-changing. We live in a world where 8 billion different people are having 8 billion different thoughts and feelings right now. They're not you. You know, so you are kind of a little ecosystem of weather, right? That's a good way to think about yourself. You're a little ecosystem of weather. You have your own weather, and other people are having a very different ecosystems of weather, completely different. So their feelings are not coming from outside. They're all created inside of us. And this is amazing. They're temporary. Have you ever had a situation like, you probably had this, Anne, where somebody was like super distressed around you, and like you were running around trying to make it right for them, you know, at some point, because it looked like to you and to them that you running around was going to make it better, and you know, nothing really worked. You tried everything, nothing really lifted their mood or changed their experience. And then the next day they're completely fine. You say to them, oh, that terrible thing from yesterday, and they're like, what terrible thing? Oh no, that's gone. And you know, we've all experienced that, right? Where somebody's had a, like, let's, in England they call it a hissy fit. Someone's had a hissy fit about X, you know, about what this person said to them or this terrible situation, and the next day they're like, oh no, that I don't feel that way anymore. That's because they're living in their own weather, and the weather has cleared in their head. They're just completely like, I'm fine now. So feelings, this is really important piece to know if you want to help people, right? Feelings are temporary. Feelings come and go on their own. Feelings are kind of none of our business. We don't need to get caught up in our feelings and give them a lot of attention, because attention is like oxygen. It gives them room to breathe and multiply like little baby rabbits, you know. So like if you wake up, right, and you're feeling like, I don't want to go to school, everybody hates me, I don't like my life, you know, in my case, I don't want to go to work, you know, whatever it is, you wake up with that kind of I don't want to feeling. All the reasons to not want to do that thing appear. You know, that's the internal weather system creating more clouds. Now, it seems to be that the more attention we give those kind of cloudy thoughts, I don't want to's, and the more attention we give the feelings that come with that, and the more attention we give our mood, that it kind of sticks around. That seems to be the way it works. Whilst the less attention we give it, but the kind of more space we give it, it seems to just hang around for as long as it needs to and pass on its own without any real interference from us. Now, there's a metaphor in here about what might help with other people too. So if that's what's working for us, that's what's working for you and me, when we leave it alone, it passes, then maybe the same phenomena is going to be the thing that's most helpful with somebody else's weather system. How can we support them to leave it alone until it passes? How can we kind of help them be most helpful when they're lost in the clouds? Now, a couple of things to know about that. The first thing to know is that their clouds can't hurt your clouds, right? They're in their own weather system. So whatever's going on for them isn't their thinking, is personal, creating their reality, not yours. So it's possible and actually super helpful. The more that you can be in your own kind of calm, sunny, clear day, the more helpful you can be when somebody else is lost in the clouds. Like, it doesn't help for you to be lost in the clouds and them to be lost in the clouds. So that's kind of, I'm going to talk about how to help people by talking mostly about what doesn't help people. So what doesn't help people is kind of joining them in their low mood and kind of agreeing everything is terrible, you know, from a kind of reinforcing their perspective kind of way. But because then you get caught up in the cloud. Oh, yeah, they're bitches, they're terrible, you know, you get caught up in the story, right? You get caught up in the story, and you can kind of tell that it's a story, because stories, you know, like weather, the story of what we think about is causing our suffering changes. The story changes. Oh dear. And especially if we're in a habit of, you know, let's say anxiety, you know, we think, oh, I'm anxious because I don't want to, I'm worried about that drive that I've got to take because I don't like driving. And then you don't take the drive, and then you're like, no, actually I'm anxious because I'm worried about what that friend is going to think about this, that, the other. You know, your anxiety is kind of the thing that it looks for things to be anxious about, but the thing that it gets anxious about is constantly changing. So I really want to make that point, because we're never upset about the thing that we think we're upset about. We're just upset. We're just upset, and we're attributing it to something. So if you're trying to help someone, it really doesn't help to get in there and agree with their story, but it also doesn't help to disagree with their story. So we don't want to do that, right, either, because that, I mean, just take a look. When you're really upset and somebody says, well, that's just your story, that makes you just feel more upset, right? So we don't really want to get in there and completely validate and agree with their story, from like feeding the fire. And we don't want to disagree. So there is this thing that when we're in a clear, sunny day in our own minds, we can do that just comes totally naturally and is super helpful. And if you think about it, and at any time that you have felt that you've been helpful to a friend, I bet you were doing this naturally, because it comes naturally to us when we're clear-minded, when we're not got our own cloudy day, thinking, worrying. When we're clear-minded, and it's so simple and it's so obvious, and yet it's so transformative and healing. And if you listen to any of Dr. Bill Pettit's webinars, he always talks about this, and he's a real expert in mental health. So if you want to find out more about mental health, I recommend listening to Dr. Bill, either on The Secret of Everything or Real Change Live. He talks a lot about all sorts of mental things that we can get lost in. But he, and I've seen this for myself. So we don't want to agree, we don't want to disagree. What really makes a difference is somebody really listening. And not listening to try and fix me or change me or fix my situation. Because we do inherit in this wonderful world of ours a lot of ideas that it's a good idea to fix things, to fix yourself and to fix other people, especially if you're a doctor, right, Anne? You're trained to fix things. So, you know, fixing. So we don't want to listen to fix, or we don't want to listen for the problem, or we don't want to listen for the solution. These are all kind of ways of listening that involve our heads, our clever, huge, wonderful, brilliant minds that are designed to problem solve and find new food and shelter and fix tools. You know, they're perfect for that. But they don't work so well when you focus it on a person. So we want to listen from a different place, not from our heads. We want to listen from our hearts. And our hearts just know how to listen. You know, they just listen like a friend to be there from a deep sense of presence, from a loving place, from a place that understands. So you can understand how someone is feeling without feeding their story. And you can understand how somebody is experiencing what they're experiencing without disagreeing, even though you don't see it that way. You can still deeply understand. And in the space of understanding, something magical happens for me and the other person. When I fall into my heart and I just listen, like present, like open, like I'm listening to them like they're rain and I'm the soil. I'm just receiving, right? When I'm listening like that, I kind of disappear. They kind of disappear. And what's left is this loving space. Now I'm going to tell you a secret. This is the best secret. This is the secret of everything. When you fall, I'm going to cry now. Oh, when you fall, find yourself falling into that loving space, there is nothing to do. There is nothing to fix. And there is just one beautiful being. And that heals. And I don't know how it heals. It's a magic secret. It just does. When we settle into our true connection as human beings, without feeling that we have to be some other way, either me or the person I see is suffering. When I can just hold someone's hand, you know, when my sister was dying, and just witness and be there. I experienced, I promise you, the most magical love and the peace. They call it the peace that passes understanding. Just from being present fully with another person. And that is truly the secret to everything, and to service, you know. So I want to say a little bit about service versus helping. I would say that many of us, and I put Anne in this category, who were born to help, right? We came in wanting to help other people heal, you know, or whatever. That helping, when it's got this feeling of needing to fix attached, is somehow about us. It's somehow about our own need to feel better in the world. But when we help with just one simple motive, to serve, to be of service, it's kind of not about us anymore. And things flow. People experience being served. And, you know, somebody can, the two people could take the same actions, right? They could pick up your hand and hold it when you were sad, right? The same action. If we were filming it, we'd see the same thing happening. But one person could come because they're trying to fix you, and the other person could come with the feeling of service, and you would know the difference. There's a quality of being that when we come to be of service, it doesn't matter what we do. It comes dripping in that feeling. And that's what people resonate with and experience. So I want to say that love and understanding are the healers, but you can't do them like a strategy. It's like you have to let go of everything that isn't that and fall into your heart center, your true self, you could say. And when you're in alignment with that, the tuning fork works the other way. So then the tuning fork rings a healthy, clear, beautiful, loving ring, and the other person's being naturally wants to move in that direction. That's the way of things. We all built into our systems, even on our darkest nights, we want to come home. We want to be at peace. We want to be free. We want to be loving. We want to be found. We don't want to be lost on the inside. And so you can know that even when somebody else is threatening to cut their wrists or whatever, that somewhere inside them is a little pilot light, that little spark inside cannot die, might be dimmed, cannot die, and that just wants to come home. And if you're home on the inside, that little spark pilot light will resonate with that and will feel hopeful, and it will kind of naturally want to come in your direction. And that's what really helps people, is the more you are okay with yourself in the moment, not listening to that kind of fixing mind, being just open-hearted and receiving the other person, and sometimes sort of using your common sense, you know, doing what makes sense. You know, if they've got a knife in their hand, might make sense to take it out of their hand. You know, there are things that it makes sense. You listen to your wisdom, your common sense in that place, and that's what serves. And you know, I also want to say, none of us are better than anybody else. You know, we've all been there. When somebody's suffering, you know, really what helps is to remember what it's like when you're suffering, and that you know that you're not immune from it. It happens for you too. It is a human nature, and to have compassion for one's own and the other person's suffering. That seems to be very just a helpful thing to remember, that we all experience this, and nobody is better or worse than anyone else. You know, we all have our own inner pilot light, and we all have cloudy days sometimes. So that's kind of my opening line, Anne. I don't know, I could ramble on, but that's quite a lot of rambling on there. So, well, what would you say to all that? Anything you'd like to know more about?
Well, that's so lovely. What I was thinking was that the reason I went to medical school in the first place was because I wanted to fix people, right? You know, like you say, I was from when I was very little. My parents were getting on very well when I was very young, and then something happened and they weren't getting on very well, and I was so desperately wanted to fix that, and I was forever trying to get in there and sort out their arguments and make everything all right with them.
Yeah.
And now, if I'd known this,
yeah,
it would have been a lot different. Which I do know, but of course at the time I felt responsible, and I felt like it was up to me to fix it. And of course, the more I tried, the more it didn't work.
Mm.
And then there were a couple of parents of people that I knew that died from cancer, and I was like, oh, I've got to go and fix that now.
Mm.
Mm. So yeah, I'm sure that, you know, if people do know this, that it's not up to them to fix it in that, certainly not in that way. It's not up to them to fix anybody, but that you can be there and support them and help them. And it really, when I came across this understanding, it was just when my mother was dying, when my mother had cancer and she was dying. And for the last 6 months of her life, we had the best relationship we'd ever had, because
Oh,
but this is happy tears, you know, it's not,
I feel
yeah, because it's made such a difference to me understanding it. Yeah, so it's lovely that we're sharing it with young people now, so that they don't have to, you know, so that they can know now and understand it now.
You know, that I really love what you say, because we can take, you know, and this is touching me too, you know, we can really take so much responsibility on our shoulders because we're sensitive beings and we see other people suffering. and we end up taking that on. And I really know what that feels like, you know, kind of want to change the world, you know. And it's also a kind of what do you call it, when we come across this understanding, we want people to know about it. That's why we do what we do, right, Anne? You know, we want to help, but also it's really one of the big burdens that I think this understanding has relieved from me. And it's a slow burn. I'm not saying it went in one go, but I would say, whoops, that I'm really starting to see that I don't have to be responsible. I'm responsible for my bit of life, you know, how I do life. I might get an idea, makes sense to me to do it. I'm responsible for that. You know, I'm responsible for this body that I'm in, you know, taking care of it. And, you know, whatever it is I've agreed to be responsible for, I'm responsible for. But I'm not fundamentally responsible for fixing everything that comes in my way. You know, that can lead to burnout and not taking care of myself and putting everything else first in the kind of mission to achieve my responsibilities. So, you know, I really resonate with that, Anne, and I can see how my own orientation towards fixing probably began when I saw my mother in a great distress, and that I was quite young. So it created that's something to do with me. I need to fix that, right? You know, I'm never going to let that happen again. So a kind of hypervigilance, kind of, which means being really alert for what might go wrong so I can correct it. So, you know, it's very common. But, you know, what I want to say to my past self that didn't understand this yet is just what a wonderful, there was behind that desire to fix and take responsibility was this beautiful desire to serve, you know, was a wholesome and loving energy. And it was always it was maybe wearing the wrong clothes, but the energy was still there. The impetus was still there. And now when I've kind of taken all that burden off my shoulders, that desire to serve hasn't gone away in either of us. And it just finds different ways to do it that work better, right? We just find ways to serve that are more in alignment for us, and therefore probably serve more, you know, and serve more people and serve in the way that we're meant to serve. But I just know that when I'm the key to all of it, it looks like it's the other person's suffering that needs to be dealt with. But actually, the key to all of it is the more settled down and in that loving space that we talked about, that space of love, that space of infinite love, that space of love that is kind of bigger than us, that we're all a part of. You know, it's a loving energy. You could call it God, I suppose. If you were religious, you might call it God. If you were scientific, you'd probably call it the kind of universal field or the quantum field, the energy of all things. You might call it the universe. You might call it the oneness if you were in that way oriented. You know, it doesn't really matter what you call it, because the words aren't it. There's a quality it brings into our being where we are deeply at home, we are deeply okay, and we're deeply here now. And we're just being like a dog, if I can say that. You know how dogs are just like never bored? They don't seem to be bored. They're just in the moment, happy to see you, sniffing around. Oh, we're going for a walk. Yay, you know, walking. You know, they're just whatever's happening that dogs are there for, right? I think we're meant to be the same, actually. We interfere with a lot of strategic planning and a lot of rumination on the past, but or self-referencing, thinking about yourself. Don't do that. You don't need to do that. I mean, you will when you need to, but you don't have to have a lot of attention on you to live a happy life. In fact, the less attention on you and how you're doing, the happier your life is. I've just read a study on that. It's really fascinating. There's a correlation between happiness and service. Happiness and not having a lot of preoccupation or thinking about yourself. The more we think about ourselves and how we're doing, the lower our moods get, because we are creating those clouds. Remember that ecosystem? We're creating those clouds. People don't realize that. They think if I think about myself, I'll get better, right? Doesn't that look like it's a good idea? I know I want to get better in my life. I want to suffer less. I want to help people. I will get better and think a lot about how to get better. Looks good on the tin, but when you open it up inside, all there is a can of worms, man. Honestly, that does not work. All you're doing is creating a lot of self-referential thinking about you, little ecosystem of clouds. Inevitably, that will bring the mood down, because that's what lots of cloudy thinking does. You're no good to anyone, least of all yourself. So when you let the clouds pass, you naturally fall into that loving space, which is kind of bigger than you, that you're part of, like the dog is, and it can guide you. There is in you guidance about how to live a beautiful life, and nobody ever taught it to you. People might have taught you things that resonated with your guide inside, with your spark inside, your pilot light. Things might have made your flame flicker. That's true, but it's your flame flickering, and that guide inside always can tell you whether you're on or off track. And actually, you can't really be off track, but it can just sort of, when you listen to it, you get information about what will serve your highest good right in this moment, right now. Sometimes it's logical, sometimes it's not logical. I had an opportunity to do a talk, and I love opportunities to do talks, right? And I always love them. And I always, because I really love to share what I've discovered and be of service. And this opportunity to do a talk came up, and I could have done this talk, and something in me just said, don't do the talk. And it wasn't logical and it wasn't rational. It just said, this one's not for you, let it pass by. And I wanted to override it. I wanted to say logically, hang on a minute, you love doing talks, and this is a reasonable money, and this is, you physically can do it. But something in me just said, not this one, not this time, not for you. Don't know why. I went with it. I tried to make up some reasons why I wasn't doing it, but really I knew it was just a feeling. So we've all got that little guide inside, that says, hey, don't walk down that street. Or that friend's, maybe not that good for you right now. Or that friend says, oh, let's do this naughty thing. And you're like, I really shouldn't. It's always guiding us. And that guide inside, I call it your wisdom, is you've got it. When you're in the loving space, which we all can fall into at any moment, wisdom naturally pops up, has a, very clear voice, and says, do this, avoid that. It's a personal GPS on the inside. Everyone's got it, no exceptions. It can, however, the signal can get lost in the clouds, right? So, you can get away from that. But the cool thing is, when you want to help other people, this is super cool, right? The more you know that you have that guide inside and that wisdom to listen to for yourself, right? I did not know this for a very long time. I knew I had a guide inside. I always knew that. I was very blessed. And some of us, especially if we've had difficult childhoods, have a very good sense of that guide inside, because we've had to rely on it, because our external circumstances didn't give us quite the stability we're looking for. So we had to rely on something else. So many of us who have had very difficult childhoods have very good connection with the guide inside. Some of us are still learning about it, but this guide inside, when you listen to it, it will give you everything you need to know about right now. It's not so interested in the past or the future. The guide inside is it is interested in the future, in the sense that it will guide you on the path of your great, what will serve you the most. But it is a very in the now phenomena. So your guide inside, the wisdom that you have now, that will guide you now, will work now. It's just in time. It's just in time. So it's like you're driving on a motorway and your guide inside says, hey, turn off left. Well, you only need the guide inside to say that when it's time to turn left. That's how it works. You don't need the guide inside to do that 10 miles before, and you certainly don't need it 10 miles after. But you just, or maybe, but if you ignored it, but the guide inside is just saying turn left now, very quietly, and that is all. It's always available to do that. But when we get lost in our busy thinking and our upset thinking and our big feelings, we can't hear it. Neither can our friend who's in trouble. But they've still got a guide inside, and so do you. So the more we're in the loving space, the more the guide inside can be heard. The more we're in the loving space listening to our guide inside, the more the other person naturally feels hopeful when they're around us, because their own little pilot-like guide inside starts to wake up. The more that they're able to connect with that in themselves, the more they know what to do about their very own thing. And all we ever did was just be in our loving space, listening to our own guide inside. Does that make sense to you, Anne?
It does. It does. There's something else, though, I think that's really important, which is about what service is. Because for, what's coming to my mind is that I did all the things that I did because I wasn't listening to the guide so much. I was listening to what I thought I should be doing. So I was listening to all this stuff that was, this is what you should be doing. And I thought that was the guide, right? So I got confused about what the guide was.
Yeah.
And there was a time when I went on Tony Robbins event, which was I went on all of his training stuff, and it was a 9 days in Hawaii. So we're in Hawaii for 9 days, and every day we were in the dark room, all inside, no view of the outside at all, from 8 o'clock in the morning till midnight. And we would come out to do some exercises every now and then, staying in absolutely, luxury hotels and so on, but not really seeing anything of the outside. So you're in Hawaii for 9 days, and we get 1 day off in the middle. 1 day to have off and to do. But they then made this 1 day. There was an option that you could use it as a day of service. I was so pissed off because I couldn't understand. I tried to logically understand why it was, because I felt guilty if I didn't get involved in it. But at the same time, I wanted a day off. My guide was telling me to have a day off, and that I'm here in this beautiful place. This is my only opportunity to explore it, to make the most of it. But there was so much. The pressure from the outside was it would be they were assuming that most of the people didn't understand what it felt like to help other people. I spent my whole life doing that, and doing it because I felt that I should, right? So I was annoyed at them assuming that I didn't know what that was, that wasn't. But at the same time felt that, I should do it, right? So I lived so much in what I should be doing and not listening to the actual guide. And what I mean is that service doesn't always come in the form of, like we're doing, coaching people, or even this particular project, right, is not born out of, oh, I need to go and spread this word out to people. It was more, well, number one, it was, I just woke up one day and thought, that's what you've got to do. But it's what I'm doing, what I'm really, really enjoying doing is the designing, the posts and the doing the stuff on the internet. And it means I can work outside. It means I can, because for me, going to medical school was a disaster. I hate being indoors. I hate being indoors. So I didn't get out of it what I thought that I was going to get out of it anyway. I wasn't able to help people in the way that I thought I was going to be able to. And it was all because I was listening to, you should be doing it this way. And I was listening to thought and not to my heart, and not to what was really me. So there are people who are really artistic, for example, who are like, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't be doing that because that's not helping people. That is serving people. It's understanding that our way of serving doesn't have to come in the form of, I must go out and help people. Yeah. And when you're listening, now that I am listening to that part of me, now that I am in tune with that part of me, I just do what I enjoy doing and love doing it. And it ends up serving other people rather than doing it because I should be serving other people. So I
that's so beautiful. The should. Okay. Can we talk about that for a minute? Because I'd really love to go a deeper dive into that, because it is my area of specialty. It's called knowing. So I want to talk about knowing for a minute, because there's two types of knowing, and they're different, and they got different feeling, and we don't want to get them confused, right? So I'm going to say knowing about things. That's one kind of knowing about information, data, facts, knowledge that is being received from someone else, from some other source, somebody else's experience. It's the domain of the intellectual mind, right? And there's normally a right, wrong, a good, bad. It's often the domain of should, where shoulds come from. If you're a good person, you'll do this, or this is, 68% people are more happy in the morning if they do these three things. It's informational, it's knowledge based, it's somebody else's kind of experience, potentially, or lots of somebody's aggregated. It's data based, and you can have a lot of intellectual knowledge and know a lot about something. Let's say you're the world's expert on kissing. You know everything in the world from data about kissing. You know the perfect lip temperature. You know exactly where the tongue's meant to go, how long. You know everything about kissing, right? What kind of lips kiss best, everything. Now, knowing everything about kissing, does that make you a good kisser? It may, but it's not the only ingredient. It would be possible to know everything about something and still not embody it. Yeah. So there's this missing piece, right? For true knowing, there's this missing piece. So I'm gonna call that knowing you know. Knowing you know, right? It's a different feeling. So there's knowing about, which is intellectual. Nothing wrong with it. It's really helpful. It's really good to know about how to cook a boiled egg. Really handy. I'm imagining when you're a surgeon, it was really good to know that the hip bone's connected to the thigh bone. Like you need to know things, right? But knowing is a kind of comes from inside you. It's got a feeling. It's like aha. Oh, I get it. You kind of, oh, I see clearly now. It's got a simplifying, clarifying quality to it. Aha, eureka. Sometimes we're just very quiet, simple. Oh, that's obvious. It's common sense. I'm going to call that insightful knowing. So we've got intellectual knowledge and insightful knowing you know. And that quality, we know we've had an insight because our perspective changes. And insight is delivered by the guide inside. So there's this moment of clarity, a fresh thought appears, a non-cloudy day thought appears, a different thought appears that is clarifying. The weather clears, everything looks different, nothing's changed out there. That's insight. And it happens on the inside from the guide inside. So, this we live in a world, and you and I were I'm looking at the world at the moment. I don't know if you've read the book Sapiens, Anne, but it's a phenomenal read. You should read it. I think you'd really like it. It's a history of humankind. And we're looking at the way the world is right now, at this moment in time. And it's like all the kind of dysfunction of humanity is sped up somehow. And we're doing things that are kind of crazy, but they're innocently crazy. We've just all inherited our parents' ideas of what we should do, right? And so it's only if we all collectively wake up to our own guide inside and stop listening to the shoulds that we've inherited that we as humanity can make a different, change the course. Because that's so many of us are just like, I call them sheeple. We're just little sheeple going in the direction innocently of the sheep in front of us, which is our parents, right? We're innocent little sheeple. But we have to wake up from our sheepleness and realize that we all have a guide. We don't have to follow the sheep in front of us, whoever they are. It's true. So we need to listen to something else. We have to kind of have an open mind around the intellectual information of someone else's experience. Might have been right for them, but we need to listen to our own guide inside. And this is really important right now because everybody's got that guide. Everybody's got the capacity for insight. Everyone's got the capacity to wake up with a fresh mind. And the thing that we can do to serve is to learn to listen to our own wisdom on the inside and trust that other people have their own too. Do you like my sheeple, don't you, Anne?
I love it. I love sheeple. I think that's great. Yeah, I haven't heard that one before. So what I was going to say is that all the things that you've mentioned, all the real change and the podcasts with Dr. Bill and all of that are linked in the website and the link for your page on our website with all of your links to everything that you've mentioned is also going to be underneath this. So, but in the meantime, so what are you doing now?
Okay, so I'm doing loads of things. So we've just did a conference in November with Liz and Stu, Scott and Stu Newbury, who are on after me actually. And they are, we all put together a conference called Resilient Young Minds, which are also supporting The Secret of Everything. And that's really to create a kind of kickstart a wellbeing revolution for young people, because we can see that if young people could get the understanding and understand the secret of everything, then that would be the shift that would be required to change the world. Honestly, I believe in young people have the answers. And and as you pointed out, Anne, we want people to have a lifetime of confusion and suffering. We want them to get this understanding early. So we're interested in supporting people that work with young people. That Wisdom and Wellbeing Collective, we train teachers, we train people who are doing working with knife crimes. We have in our collective, we have, the fantastic Robin Lockhart, who I'm sure has been on this series. We have Jackie Moses. Has she been on this series yet? Yeah. So, but she should be. She's amazing. She can't. Okay. But we've got lots of people who have been on this series who are part of our collective. And so what we're interested in is training up anybody who works with young people, including young people, to be well-being ambassadors, to be a beacon of light, of well-being. Remember I said earlier that, you know, when someone else has lost their bearings and they're in a cloud, then it's really important that you're in the sunshine as best you can. That's what we call being a beacon. So we train people to be a beacon of well-being and point people back home. So that's the Wisdom and Wellbeing Collective. And we're also doing that in organizations. And we run programs that develop people all the way up to being a wellbeing mentor. So we train them as practitioners, as trainers, and as mentors, so that if you really are called by this inside out wellbeing conversation, we really want to support by training lots and lots and lots of practitioners who can go out there and listen for other people's well-being. So that's they're the kind of things that we're up to at the moment. I've been working in a school in Morden with 15, 16-year-old difficult children, or children that are finding life difficult. And we did something called Young Entrepreneurs. So we taught them that their guide inside was also their creative spark. And if they learned to listen to it, they were naturally designed to be young entrepreneurs. And so that we did a program for that. And we also work with the homeless and ex-offenders with the Pret Foundation. So a lot of the people there are homeless off the streets, often sort of young adults, early teens. So these are the kind of activities that our collective gets involved in, but we also train practitioners in the consultancy. So does that answer what I'm up to?
Yeah, it does. That's really good. So I wanted people to know what they could find out more about, because that's what this is really about. It's only an introduction, and it's just to find out who you would like to learn more about and where you'd like to find out more, and so on. So there's lots and lots and lots of resources there. So if you would like to learn more about what Elizabeth's doing and what Resilient Young Minds are doing, as you said, Liz and Stu are on afterwards, and Robin's already been on. So all of those links will be underneath the video, and you can get in touch with Liz and Elizabeth, and find out more. So wow, that's been amazing. Anything else you want to say before we finish?
Never give up hope. Never give up hope. Never give up hope on yourself, and never give up hope on that person who you've seen suffering, who you wish wouldn't suffer, because it's sad, makes you sad. You know, never give up hope, because one thought, one fresh perspective in you, in the other, one fresh sunny day thought can change everything. And, you know, in the meantime, love and understanding. That's all, and most of all for yourself. Compassion for yourself. Because the more compassion is experienced, the more it's available. And I think that's the direction to look in. And if I've learned one thing in my 56 years, I'm 56 years old, I just turned 56. In my 56 years, if I've learned one thing, and I can't say I'm free of it every day, because I get cloudy days too, the thing that I thought was necessary, that is the least necessary, that I thought was the most, this is the biggest confusion I have. If I can pass this on, you do not need to judge yourself. You do not need to do it. It is the source of all your suffering. So the less shoulds, expectations, I should be different, the world should be different, less judging in general, the less right, wrong, good, bad, the less, that all creates something called separation. Because if there's a right, there has to be a wrong. If there's a good, there has to be a bad. See, that life is rarely like that. It depends where you put the camera lens, right? So if you go far back enough, you see what looks right suddenly looks wrong, and vice versa. So I would say, if you listening to this could do one thing that would change yours and other people's lives, it's to loosen up the judgment and allow yourself to be in the loving space. It is the most courageous, powerful, bold act. It is no weakness in any way. It is a surrender, but it's a surrender to a higher truth. And that's what I invite us all to do.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for being here. And I'll see you again soon.
Yeah,
Lily.
cool.
All right. Lovely. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. See you later. Bye.